everybody, and welcome to a Summer Abroad series in which we interview professors from 2025 Summer Abroad programs. Today, I'm joined with Alexa and Professor Bob Thompson.
Hello, Professor Bob Thompson. Could you please share a little bit about your professional and academic background as well as what inspired you to lead a summer abroad program in Japan next year?
Great, sure. Yeah, thanks, Noel and Alexa. Nice to be invited to this and nice to see two students from previous programs here together. It's such a joy to teach the course, both courses, both in Tokyo and in England. So you're asking me about me. I guess professional background, I am a lawyer and a human resource professional. I studied engineering first, by the way, but ultimately became a lawyer and got a couple of MBAs, one of them at the school in England where we had a program. And then I got a master's of law. I think that covers it basically for the academic background. But in terms of work, I think that's one reason why I'm effective in the classroom. I've worked at major corporations, the largest food retailer, Loblaws, the largest bank, RBC Royal Bank, the largest manufacturer at the time anyway, General Motors, and I worked at the largest litigation law firm. So I've seen some big corporations and I've seen lots of workplace issues, and I always try to tie in practicality. So that's kind of the professional background. I have been teaching for 17 years, a full-time professor at the local college, but it's one of my joys is to always teach at U of T, and I've been doing that since 2007, I believe, both the master's and undergraduate program for employee relations. Why Japan? Well, I've been there over a dozen times. I love the place, and anybody who goes, I think, would agree. It's just so inviting, so accommodating for different people from all around the world, and a wonderful destination. But it's a great playground for learning for us, for labor relations and employee relations. I want to focus our studies on the cultural aspects of Japan, and we look at apology issues and issues related to customs and tranquility and workplace hierarchy. We try to weave that into learning. So it's a great place to have an opportunity to learn.
So, what about your favorite memory from Japan? What kind of stands out to you?
Well, there's a lot, of course, and I'm all about the food, but I'm also all about the, like I mentioned, tranquility or the experience. And we do a number of field trips, as Alexa will remember. We did two a week, which is, a little bit more than the norm. And some of them were just general experiences or factory tours. But the one that stands out is the kimono tea experience for me. It's something I really wanted to do. We did it right at the beginning of our event. We had sort of the feeling of dressing up in Japanese attire, and then we attended a tea ceremony and learned about the sanctity of it and the impact it has on people and the experience. So it was very meditative, but it was also a great immersion into the culture right away. And we went with our kimono as a group to a temple to just sort of have a further experience. So that might be one, but there's so many others. But that's the one I'll mention this time. Yeah.
So, like beside of that, this kind of cultural things, like you have been teaching in England and Japan, and so what's about like the main key difference between teaching in Japan and Canterbury?
Yeah, that's a good question. I love them both for different reasons. We could draw parallels. You're asking me about the differences, but they're both island nations with a rich cultural heritage and influences on the world stage as well, and economic strength at certain times of their development. So there's similarities, but the differences you're asking me about, well, the Tokyo experience is in an urban setting. It's very hustling and bustling. There's a lot of energy, and that's great, and opportunity to learn, of course. And we look at conflict resolution, and of course, in that setting, you might have more conflict. Meanwhile, England, where it's set for my particular course, was in a pastoral setting in Canterbury, and it was an opportunity to reflect, to see the greenery, to be sort of in a center, not a huge town. Canterbury is not large, but it has a dominant cathedral there, and tourist industry that you could sort of sample, but at the same time, you can sort of pull back and look at the overarching issues. We did take field trips and looked at issues related to the industrial relations and how it influenced workplaces. So the difference, I think, is the energy level. I'm not saying one's low and one's high necessarily. It's just how we learn and the exposure we had to different inputs. Yeah.
What would you say some of the key differences are between teaching abroad in Japan versus taking a traditional course at U of T?
Okay, yeah. Well, I teach many undergrad and master courses at U of T as well, and I've taught summer abroad a few times now. And there are differences. I'm sure you'll see this in any promotion of the excellent summer abroad program. That one thing it brings us to another place, obviously, and we're immersed in a different culture. But those field trips are special for different reasons. Certainly, I make them integrated into our learning from day to day or week to week. Um, but also you're integrated into the situation and you see people and you interact. And I love that term that we see in the promotional materials for summer abroad about a living textbook, because that's really what that difference is. And of course, it's intense. We're with each other day to day for 3 hours in a classroom or 4 or 5 hours on a field trip or more. And so we get to know each other in a way that's special, and we cling to each other, I think, in a social way that's different than, say, in Toronto. You just disappear from your class and you go home and you do your thing. But you generally interact with your classmates day to day. You're probably staying in the same location, residence, or a nearby facility accommodations. So anyway, the point is the difference, I think, is the level of exposure we get to whatever we're learning through experiential learning, but also the level of exposure we get to each other. Because I noticed the network stays strong after the class is over. That doesn't mean learning at the U of T isn't, it has got its strengths as well. Having a class in the institution is special, and I like teaching those too. But I got to tell you, each time I've gone on one of these trips, it's like one of the best things I do in my whole career. Yeah.
I would definitely agree. Like, I really enjoy like the Suntory factory tour and the Nissan factory tour. That was
Right.
definitely really amazing. I really like that,
Yeah.
honestly. I did not
Yeah.
expect that was that interesting, but we were
Right.
there together. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, very
I
surprised.
I like those too because our focus in the course I have IRE332 is on workplace issues, and certainly Nissan, the factory, was a workplace, and I wanted to make sure we saw how people work in Japan. Same thing goes with the Suntory Brewery. We saw another workplace. Yeah, I agree. It really was memorable.
Is there any advice that you would give to students like who might willing to participate in the
Yeah.
summer grad program?
Yeah, well, of course, I turn it over to you and your excellent staff at Summer Abroad in terms of how to apply and the steps to go through. But it's a mental process. First, you want to make sure your personal statement has all the elements that impress the folks as they select who can participate in those programs. But if you're asking me, once you're in and accepted, or you're trying to determine where you're going, I guess you have to figure out who you are and what your own academic needs are and where you'd feel comfortable. And then I found, especially the first time I went on a trip, I found myself looking at Google Maps, sort of thinking about things I wanted to do personally or overlaying the field trips and the location I was at. So I'd say get yourself in a mental situation about where you're going, and then think about some of the obstacles of where you're going, just to be realistic, because it's not perfect. It's not the same as home. You'll stay in a residence that might not have all your special accoutrements of home life. And also, there might be foods that are different you're not used to. So obviously be realistic about your overall plan. And then maybe pick up a book and read something, or go online and watch a YouTube video of someone's analysis of your destination. But stay optimistic and aspirational and think about how this is going to ultimately change your plan or your academic experience, or ultimately your whole pathway to a career. It can really do that. It can jumpstart some thinking that you have never done before. Yeah.
So that concludes our interview today with Professor Bob Thompson. We want to thank you so much for your time, for sharing your insight into the program, sharing your advice to potential students. I'm sure this is a video that so many students are going to watch, and they will be able to take away so much from this interview. So thank you so much for your time.